I really want them to first and foremost focus on their own plan of attack, no matter who the hitter is, and then layer on little bits of information about the hitter's weaknesses that we may be able to expose if it lines up with our plan of attack already.
Hey, this is Ryan from More Than Velocity Podcast. I'm here with Jordan Oseguera, the legendary Jordan Oseguera, and we got a special guest in Mickey Callaway. I'm so excited for him to be here. And interestingly, the three of us were all together with the Angels during one of the most challenging years of baseball in 2020, where we had to handle COVID and a lot of the dynamics around that. But this is going to be an exciting podcast because not only do we have somebody we consider a friend, but somebody who has really had a profound influence on both Jordan and my career. So, Mickey, man, I want to turn it over to you. I want you to give a little bit of background of what you're doing because we're going to get into your experiences. And, you really have a lot to offer. You've worn a lot of hats in baseball. So take it over, buddy.
Yeah, well, my name is Mickey Callaway. Like Ryan said, I had the honor to work with these two guys with the Anaheim Angels, or the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, they're called now, a few years ago. And I was lucky enough to be able to play this game for a long time, and transitioned into the coaching realm of things in 2010. Spent a few years in the minor leagues as a pitching coach and a pitching coordinator for the Cleveland Indians, and then moved up to the big league level as the pitching coach for 5 years, I believe, in Cleveland. And then I went on to manage a little bit in New York for the Mets, and then joined you guys in 2020 with the Angels. So, very, very fortunate to be able to be in this game that we all love so much for such a long time, and gain a ton of friends and a ton of experience through this game that is the best game in the world.
Totally. I want to turn it over to Jordan before I talk. And Jordan, I just want you to talk a little bit about what Mickey, had done for you in your career and things you've learned from him, because I want to go into that too. I think that's important for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's obviously the people who give you the opportunities to get into pro ball, and those guys had a huge impact on, me getting into pro ball. But there was two people that come to mind right now, specifically in the Angels, that number one gave me a platform at the big league level and made me, in a sense, feel, confident, comfortable at the big league level. Number one was Tyler Skaggs. In 2017, that's when I first started going to the big leagues a couple times a month here and there. And I'd be walking through, and you guys know how that weight room is in Anaheim underneath the stadium. There's coach's office, weight room on one side, food room on the other. I'm just trying to lay low, keep my head below the trench line there. And Skaggs would go out of his way to pull me into the weight room, give me a hug, let me know I'm valued. Hey, I'm really glad you're here. Get in here, come watch us do some stuff. And then the other one was obviously Mickey. And, in spring training, Mickey got brought in. Is a weird scenario. It's like, hey, here's Jordan Oseguera. This guy's going to start going over all this data, showing you this, showing you that. And I'm giving you my perspective. Mickey gives me his. We're able to pick each other's brains. And the great thing with it is most guys in baseball, and again, I say this is a blanket statement. It's not the way that it goes. Obviously, I'm just using this as an example. There's a lot of ego because there is a lot of money. There's a lot of, hey, I don't want to lose my position, where Mickey just goes, hey, I'm going to learn something from you. What do you have to teach me? And then how can I give you my 2 cents on that? And what can I teach you? And that was always one of my biggest things there wasn't like an ego of, well, that's not how I look at mechanics, or that's not how I look at pitch development. It's, yeah, you got something to add. We're all trying to win. And I remember we had this big spring training meeting. There's actually a really cool picture of it that someone sent me where you're giving a talk in spring training in the locker room. I'm sitting in a random locker over there. And I remember that exact talk, you're going over it and you're saying, I don't care if you do things this way, if you do things that way, if you like this, if you like that, all I care about is we're all pulling on the same rope to win. And that was a nutshell of your conversation. And that's one of the big things I took away, is just the less ego you have, the more you're willing to just open up, listen, and hear what others have to say. You're going to learn a lot. You're never going to be disappointed in it.
Yeah, I'm gonna dovetail on that. So, the thing that I really was admiring about Mickey and in awe, what Jordan's saying is correct. Like, egos come from people being successful, and Mickey deserves to be egotistical, and he wasn't, which was very shocking. I won't name names, but we had some pretty decorated people from the old school world of baseball, and that was so important for them to be right. And I really, I watched Mickey in one of our meetings, and he stood up and he said, "Hey, in everybody in the room," he said, "I don't care, about who's right. I just need somebody to say something and do the right thing." He valued everybody. He's like, you could be a clubhouse attendant, you could be whoever you are in the game. If you have insights that are going to make the team better, you got to speak up. And it really kind of put me at ease. Like, there's a term that we use in baseball. A lot of people talk about it, and they talk about it in business too. And baseball is weird because it's a business, but it's not like a real business. But the term's called psychological safety. Okay. And for people that don't know about what psychological safety is, it is having the environment in which you can complain, you can have conflict, your opinion is valued, you're not always subordinate, or you have to be a servant to everybody. And it's very hard for some people to establish that environment. And right from the get-go, Mickey did that. In he just allowed you to have clear conversations with players, and he wanted you included. I remember when we first started talking about motion analysis, and people who didn't know what Jordan did, but Jordan digitized, and for those of you in the biomechanics world who have put dots on people's elbows and shoulders and knees and hips, and calculated angles from video. I mean, he did that maybe 20,000, 30,000 data points. He evaluated pitchers at, almost daily. And Mickey's just like, "Hey man, guys, this stuff. I don't want to be the messenger. Just come in and tell them, talk to the guys. I'll be there. I'll support you." And I was like, that just doesn't happen, because there's a lot of territorial elements about working with players. And I also didn't get that atmosphere from him. This is when you tell that there's somebody who's a really high quality coach and somebody who's got a lot of accomplishments behind him, is that he doesn't want to put his name on anybody. Didn't want to do that. And he was just like exactly in his philosophy. He just lived it. He's like, "I don't care who's right. Just mention the right thing, and be a part of it." And I remember being in that room, and it's like, we're all talking to the player, and the player's getting it. And, the other good thing is that when he talks to players, he doesn't make comparisons, and all of us, like if I was in my workplace and, I'm working with Jordan, and let's say Dugan, our president, is saying, "Hey, wish if you want to get better at this, go check out what Jordan's doing X, Y, and Z." He never made a comparison that way. And I noticed when we were communicating about mechanics, they look to really optimize what those people do. So I really took it from there, man. And he's so consistent in his personality. That is something too that I think is important as a coach. I see that as a manager. I think that's what made him such a solid managerial candidate, and being and leading a team, is that I just, my experience with him, he was even keel, he was patient, he listened, and he never really changed the demeanor. You knew what you were getting with him every day. It wasn't unpredictable, it wasn't emotional. So, these are just some things, that Jordan and I witnessed about Mickey, we take into our own career. But I want him to start telling some stories. So I want to start, Mickey. We pumped your tires for a little bit. So I want you to talk about, your playing days, and you play in some of the eras with like some of the greats, like, talk about how you face certain batters, the superstars. Not that you weren't a superstar, but, you're talking about, you were, going against guys like A-Rod, right? And, McGuire, probably in that era, right? You were seeing some of those talents. So go for it, man.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for the kind words, guys. I was probably that way because you guys were probably just as good at players as I was, and probably could have performed at the major league level as good as I did. But no, I think that all those things you talked about before we get into what you asked, is because I always did everything for the love of the game. And like you said, I didn't care who was right. I cared that we got it right.
Yeah.
And that's our duty as a coach, is to get it right. Whether it comes from Jordan, whether it comes from Ryan, whether it comes from another player, let's get it right. And to use the mind of the organization. You can't ever go wrong with that. So, everybody around me made me better. And I was fortunate enough to be with organizations that put people around people that would always make each other better. So I wanted to listen to those people that they surrounded me with. And it's humbling to be around a guy like Jordan, a guy like yourself that knows so much about their part of the game. And it would be silly for me, who didn't know much about those sides, to not listen and to not use every bit of your knowledge to help the player. Then I'm doing the player an injustice. So I think as long as we all love this game, there are no egos, and we do it for the love of the game instead of for yourself. Because, like you said, I never did it for credit. I could care less about that. I wanted the player to get the credit, and I wanted the organization to win. And I think if everybody takes that approach, that's what it takes to be a true winner. The way they do things in Cleveland is a pretty special place, and there's a lot of what we're talking about right now going on there, and that's why they have such great success with a very small payroll. Yeah. Love the game, man. Love to coach, and it's all about the player at all times. And if you take that approach, I think you're going to be the best coach you can possibly be. But yes, I grew up or came up in an era where the ball was flying out of the ballpark pretty easily for some people, and especially when I pitched. But it was a time where the game was really, really exciting. That's for sure. I mean, at any time, guys are going to hit the tape measure shots off you. And another thing I liked about the game is nothing was pigeonholed. As well as guys could hit the ball out of the park, there'd be the guys that would lay down a bunt hit on you, in a situation where it was called for in a game to scratch that one run across. So, obviously the game has changed a little bit. And I'm not saying it's changed for the worse, maybe for the better, as far as trying to maximize your ability to score runs and maximize your ability to strike guys out. But it's definitely a different game today. And it would be interesting to see players from the past go and play in the game today and see what the difference would be. But what a great era I got to play in, watching those guys. Facing guys like Alex Rodriguez. I got to face Alex Rodriguez when I was 10 years old, when I was 12, 14, 16, all the way up to the big league level. So I think I have video of both of us playing against each other when we were 10, sitting over in the closet. So just what a great era to play in, and I really enjoyed it immensely.
Hey, if you don't mind talking just on the big differences between the minor leagues when you were coming up as a player as opposed to the minor leagues now, because it's not still like the minor leagues are a great place to be at this point in time. But if you compare the minor leagues now to where you were when you were playing in the minor leagues, it's like, 5-star dining comparatively.
Yeah. Oh, it's night and day. And especially the nutrition. You mentioned dining. The nutrition is unbelievable. I mean, we were drinking water, eating soup and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, maybe a tuna fish sandwich if you were lucky, and the team wanted to splurge that day. But weight training was totally different. Right. They had just started to maybe introduce strength coaches when I was, maybe in AAA. The coaching.
What year was that, Mickey? If you
So I got drafted in '96. There wasn't much strength training going on as far as like having your own strength coach at each level. Then by about '99, when I was in AAA and making my major league debut, That's when you started seeing a strength coach at certain levels. I think
Wow.
maybe we just had it in AAA at that time. And then it was just your basic here, follow this program, go lift. It's kind of overseen a little bit,
Was
and
it
then go
mostly
out
seen
and
by
stretch.
the trainer, or was a dedicated strength coach, is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
the first few years, 96 through 98, I think it was the trainer kind of
Uh-huh.
overseeing everything and giving you your little card that had your workout program. And then in 99, I think we had our own strength coach that kind of oversaw what you're supposed to be doing in the training room. But you'd go on the road and you had to go to a random gym, and they'd give you times. Hey, get up at 9 today and go lift at this random gym and this random city.
The gym
And
bus, the gym
yeah,
bus. I hated that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And now almost every facility has a place to go work out, it
Right.
seems, and
Right.
just the ability to get the best out of everybody's ability is so much greater these days. Coaching wise, strength training, nutrition. We talked about Cleveland a little bit, and Cleveland's philosophy is, since we not a big market team and we don't have the money to spend on all these players, let's put that money into things that will help players get the most out of their ability. So they're
Yeah.
doing cryo chambers, and
Oh yeah.
they're doing it all. They have the float tanks, and they make sure that nothing goes unturned to make sure you can get the best out of your ability. So the evolution of the development of a player has gone. I mean, it's improved by 200% since the days when I was playing.
Wow, man. So I want to ask you too, kind of like on the teammate side of things, who would you say was like an outstanding teammate that you played with? And just
Yeah,
why?
Troy.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, Troy Percival was one of the best. When I was with Anaheim in the big leagues, I got to start a little bit. I got to spend some time in the bullpen, and Troy Percival, he made everything every second of the day intense and only about winning. I mean, he was the
Mhm.
first guy to the ballpark. He was the first guy to support you. He was the first guy to get on you when you needed it. And to have a leader like that is one of the reasons the Angels won the championship in 2002, because you had a leader like that. Darren Erstad was another one. The intense focus and the ability to be such a great teammate and be supportive of even a young guy like myself at the time was unbelievable. There's guys like Bobby Witt, who I played with in
Mhm.
Tampa Bay. He was the same way. So there's no secret why Bobby Witt's kid is now a superstar athlete, because Bobby Witt is one of the best guys I've ever been around. To help a young player to try and develop. It's Norm Charlton. There's guys that I can list. It's a mile long, and I tried to take something from everyone I was ever around. Whether it was what, I might not want to do this, but I definitely want to do these things. It's kind of like what we talked about with coaching earlier. You want to take something from everybody that's around you at all times to make yourself better.
Yep. Amazing. That's awesome, man. Um, the one thing I wanted to ask you too is, from your playing days, how have the coaching philosophies changed from you being a player and then going into, being a major league pitching coach, and kind of the evolution of that?
Yeah, so like we talked about a little bit earlier, when I was playing, there wasn't a ton of instruction.
Mhm.
It was more the mental side of the game a little bit, and then let's kind of leave this guy alone for his first half season in pro ball. There's a great story that Greg Maddux tells when he signed and he went to short season ball. His pitching coach wasn't talking to him much in his bullpens, blah, blah, blah. And Greg went up to him and said, "Hey, man, why are you not coaching me?" And it's like, well, it's everybody's philosophy. Let's see what this guy's got. The scout signed you for a reason. Let's see what he's got and kind of be hands off for your first half season in pro ball. And he was like, no way, man. I want some instruction. I want that knowledge. And that's the guy that taught Greg Maddux his changeup. Mm-hmm. And turned him maybe, and not that Greg Maddux wouldn't have been a Hall of Famer anyway, but he learned his best pitch in that half season of pro ball. And I think that is what has changed the most over the years. Is we're way more hands-on. There's way more technology. Right. Players know how to use the technology much better. To be honest with you, if we back then, some things kind of sounded crazy when people started talking about using video and things like that, because we didn't grow up in a technological age like these players did. I've never played a video game in my life, so I don't even know how to work a control. So it would have been weird for me to try and use some of the stuff, because my background, I wasn't raised with that. But these guys, they know everything about technology. They have access to the internet at their fingertips. So they're always researching things. Sometimes that can be bad because, they're can confuse themselves a little bit by looking at too much stuff. So that was one of the challenging things when I started coaching is I think guys could get on the internet a little bit and kind of make their mind race, and I'd have to reel them back in and say, hey, look, I know you looked at this. I can tell by your verbiage you were looking at this on the internet. This might not necessarily apply to you. But like you said earlier, we have to listen to what they say, because I love that they were thirsting for that knowledge and getting out there and researching things. But if you don't understand it, you could put yourself in a little bit of a compromising situation. It would be like me trying to go over with Jordan and go over all those 20,000 data points that you talked about and try to do that. I couldn't do that. That's why Jordan, I'm like, here, get over here, man. I don't know what the heck this is. You're the expert. Get over here and explain this to us so we don't mess ourselves up. But I love the way that coaching has evolved, because it puts us, the coach, in a position where we can really, really help players more. And we're way more proactive because we can get out there and research stuff for ourselves. And you have to research stuff for yourself, because if not, your player is going to be bringing up stuff that you've never heard of, and you're going to feel like you're not capable of coaching him. So, it makes your job way more fun, and you get a lot more satisfaction out of it these days because of the technology and the ability to go make yourself a quasi-expert in something, because it's at your fingertips over the internet.
Yeah, to give some examples on that, I remember in that 2020 season, we had a player. He was a up and down big league guy, and it was just like he was always changing a pitch grip. I remember it was a split finger. I'm not going to use names, obviously, but he'd always be getting on YouTube. He'd be like, oh, I saw this on YouTube. This guy said to throw a split finger like this. And I remember we had some coaches going, we just need to find a way to ban YouTube from this guy. How do we just get him off YouTube? And I remember Mickey's response was, well, what if we just tried to educate him a little bit more? Because we obviously know how to teach split fingers. Let's sit down with the guy. Let's make sure that we're pointing him in the direction that we think is good. And then I had a similar situation pop up that I learned from that experience, because that kid ended up turning it around. He finished the season really well in the big leagues. We obviously missed the postseason. We were in a little bit of a chase there for a little bit, but we didn't get in, but it is what it is. And I remember I go back, looking back to that 2020 experience, I have a player that I'm working with now who's like, every single week it's something new. And I said, look, I know you're trying this from this group. You're trying that from this group. You're trying that. It's like, if you're sailing a ship and you're in a storm and you're just like changing your rudder all the time, you end up just going in a circle. You don't make any ground. If you're going to get out of the storm, you have to set the rudder, hold it, go for a couple weeks, evaluate. You're either in the right direction or you're not. And then we can make an adjustment. But give something some time. And that's kind of the message you relayed to this player was, hey, let's try this one split finger grip for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then we'll find out if it's better or worse. we won't know if we keep just kind of grasping at something new all the time. But it's good to have that knowledge. We want players to want to know, because that's the thing. Nobody knows everything. Everybody's got a piece of the puzzle. And if we come in there with the belief that our one way to teach a split finger is the only way to teach a split finger, we're going to ruin 90% of kids when it comes down to it. So that's one of the big things. I was able to take that lesson. I remember hearing you go over that. And instead of being confrontational with the player, you said, let's collaborate here. Let's get on the same page. Let's come up with a plan to evaluate and actually assess. And now I'm going to go run over and close my blinds before my dog tries to jump through the window. I'll be back, but keep going.
Yeah. So Jordan brought up a great point. That's our job, is to be their rudder and to steer them in the right direction. And their job is to be open to anything and everything. I think that coachability is an important, is very important for a player, because he's got to be open and trust what you're saying to him. And if you build that trust and he's a coachable kid, you can steer him the way that he needs to be steered when it needs to be steered.
Mm-hmm.
I think that being a coach that allows players to coach themselves is the way to be. I remember when I started coaching going, man, if I only knew what I know now, I would have been 100 times better. I would have played in the big leagues for 10 years. And there's no doubt in my mind that would have happened. So my goal was always to get my players to the spot I was when I started coaching while they're still playing, so they can coach themselves. So I want them to be out there on the internet. I want them to be researching things. I want them to try and coach themselves. I want them to fail 3 times before I mention anything to them in the bullpen, to see if they can make that adjustment on their own. And if I can get them to be able to coach themselves and make in-game adjustments when they need to, and make in-bullpen adjustments on their own, and I can, it may seem like I'm just sitting back doing nothing, but I think I'm allowing the player to get the best out of his ability. Sometimes the best coaching philosophy is to pull back a little bit and let the player do his own thing. But yeah, like Jordan said, when you get a guy that's been researching on the internet, listen to everything he's got to say. Because when you listen to people, sometimes in return, they'll listen to you when you speak. And when you speak, maybe it's a little bit more impactful because you've been listening a little bit more than talking. So I think that in that case, what Jordan's talking about, you have to sit down. You have to allow this player to, you think about it, he's been sitting there for weeks and weeks on the internet trying to figure something out. And if you shut it down right away, he's going to be like, what the heck? I put all this work in and you're not even listening to what I have to say, or not even trying to, understand all those hours I put in, and you're just shutting it down immediately. So we have to be open to anything and everything a player wants to do. We have to understand it. We have to do our own research on it, and then steer them in a direction that's going to be most beneficial for the player.
Yep.
Yeah. This is just another side topic on that. I remember we had a similar instance pop up where it's about the relationship building with the player, and it's about creating that trust. And a lot of it is listening. And if a player's not coming to you and going, well, how do I get that help with my split finger from, Mickey, Jordan, whoever it may be, we need to ask, okay, well, why are we not the trusted source? What do we need to learn on our end? And I remember it's the same thing. It's like, look, if our players are going outside the org, then we need to ask how we make ourselves improved. And it was always like, how do we take that responsibility? Where, as opposed to a lot of coaching as well, it's that guy's fault. You wanted to go, how do we make this about us? So the players know they got a question on, I don't know, throwing a 2-pound ball. Let's find out as much as we can about 2-pound balls. So that was one of the things I always appreciated with that as well.
One
that's right.
Go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead. Yeah. I was I've been over at Kyle Body's place in Seattle. I've been, to the pitching ranch in Houston. You have to go find out what these guys are learning. And I've learned a ton of stuff from those outside sources. And I always encouraged my guys, go see whomever you want. And then I'll work and collaborate with that person to make you be the best you can possibly be.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so important. I mean, I was going to go and ask you another question, but we all share players in their player development. In pro baseball, you get players for a certain part of the year, and when they leave, they work with somebody who they've trusted. They might have worked with them since they were 10, and I think it hurts when you have that disconnect, when there's a miscommunication or the players in the middle between the philosophies of their private coach or their off-season coaching, and the organizational philosophies of what they want from the player and obviously the pro coach. And I think that is what you're saying is huge, is not only trying to learn about the strategies of these outside coaches, but to form the relationship so that you can come together. I mean, we had a situation, Jordan can attest, we had a player that he wasn't performing very well and he wasn't getting better in our organization. And he had gone out to work with a private coach, and the private coach had completely redefined the way he threw. Talking like a guy who was a high 3/4, and then he was more of a sling kind of guy. But he was out of pain. His arm felt comfortable. He had a little bit more action on his baseball. And when he came back, and there must have been something missed between reviewing what the kid's doing and trying to get video from him or communicating. So when he comes on site, he throws his first bullpen and it's videoed. And I remember it was sent to the front office and they're like, who is this pitcher? Like we didn't, this is not what we drafted. Right. So it puts a lot of pressure on your coordinators, your pitching coaches to say, well, now we have to undo this pitcher. Right. And then the pitcher is trying to find his old delivery again after working on it, a different delivery for 4 or 5 months, and he got hurt. There's just, it's just those kinds of things. Seeing that, it's like, there has to be, especially there's so much technology and the ability to communicate a lot more effectively and fast. Can't put the player in the middle. You have to be able to collaborate, and we have to come to a common ground about, hey, this is, we pay you. We're the ones who employ you. This is the person you pay. We have to make this right all together, or else the player suffers, and that's, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because a lot of people are out there. We have a lot of people in the professional baseball world that listen to this, and it's funny because Jordan and I work in both worlds. You got the people in the private sector who think, man, these people in professional baseball, they have no clue. They might not know the player the way that person knows the player. And then the opposite side, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's paying this dude. And he's completely, undoing everything we're doing. Like, this is a funny world that Jordan and I mean, on a consulting level.
To give you an example, I just had it was probably on Monday or Tuesday, I had a phone call with a facility. I won't say where they are. They're listening. They'll obviously know the conversation. But he called me and goes, hey, I got my minor leaguers coming in right now. And, I'm trying to do this and this and this with them. But the org says they want this, this, and this is what they gave him on his exit interview. What do I do? I said, I would ask that guy for the farm director's information and be like, hey, if this guy improves on these things, is he still going to be around, or is he still going to be like a release candidate? Like, what is this guy to your org? Because if we increase him going this way and it's not what you guys are looking for, it ends up in the same scenario we just talked about, where that player's now either hurt or he's released or whatever the situation is, as opposed to going, hey, let's find out what that org wants. Let's move the needle in that direction. Because now if you move the needle in that direction, most organizations are going to give that guy another shot to stick around. If you don't, not only is that guy out of playing baseball, but now you're out of a client as a coach. So it's like, yeah, you may have made him better. Maybe he increased his swing and miss on that specific pitch type, but if it's not what the org wants, it's not fitting their vision and their philosophy. And that's where those competing aspects come in, where it's like, you also need to look at it from the private side of going, you need to keep getting guys better. But if they're in an organization, you need to get them better for what that org wants, because that's going to keep that guy coming to your facility and keep your doors open long term. So there's that big push and pull where it's like nobody's got it figured out. Everyone's necessarily, they're kind of playing with the same deck of cards. It's all just what order those cards come up in. But when people start thinking they have it all figured out, we're just running into problems, and the player's the one that suffers.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I want to switch gears, Mickey, because I know we're maybe going a little long, but that's okay. I think I want to tap into your experience of coaching in the regular season versus the playoffs, because right now we're in World Series time. You know, it's exciting to watch these two teams.
And you've had a lot of experience in the postseason as a coach, which is pretty cool.
So,
I don't think people realize how much this guy's been in the postseason. It's kind of neat.
Well, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, I moved from Philly to Arizona, so I'm partial to them winning the World Series, but I was in the playoffs with the Orioles in my first year with them in 2012. And I really, because being a strength coach, we were kind of on the inside. We never heard the conversation. We definitely weren't in the dugout. The communications, like, mound visits. How did those things change, from one type of the season to now a really high stakes, time of the year?
Well, that's a great question, and they do change. The playoffs are such a different animal. It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. The adrenaline, the excitement, everything is totally different. Your spin rate's going to be different. Your velocity is going to be different. How far your breaking ball goes in correlation to the back of the plate is going to be different, because it's almost like going and when you're pitching, it's almost like when you go to Colorado, you have to start your pitches in a different spot.
Oh yeah,
because they're going to be different than you're used to. Yeah. And the playoffs, it seems, are a little bit like that because of the adrenaline, the ability to spin the ball. I think we saw some controversy in the beginning of the playoffs this year about spin rates being up. Yeah. And everybody was like, oh, this guy's spin rate's up 200-300 RPMs. Everybody's spin rate is up 200 or 300 RPMs. They were just singling that guy out because you have adrenaline, and I'm sure it's different for some people. I'm sure you get a Max Scherzer who's been there, done that, or somebody who's pitched in the postseason for a long time. Maybe theirs doesn't. But if you get a rookie, a guy that's a stud, and he's never pitched in a playoff game before, you might see something totally different. You might see 98 instead of 94 because it's such a different animal. So having or knowing that when you're talking to a player during the playoffs, you have to back off a ton.
Yeah.
Okay. It's all about mentality, man. It is not about.
They're so high. You mean they're so elevated?
Yes, and absolutely. You back off on the information a little bit. You make sure you simplify the information, and you make sure that you get those certain points across. Like, this guy swings at a breaking ball first pitch 6% of the time, so let's lead him off with a breaking ball every at bat. Those type things. When we're throwing to Aaron Judge, you better make sure you throw it at his chin instead of his, chest, just to make sure you get it up there.
Yeah.
You keep it a little bit more simple when you're talking about the information and the game plan and things like that. Because come on, man, they're out there. Yeah. Everything's going a mile a minute. And if you add on to that, it's going to be a nightmare. So you pull back a little bit. And one of this story is how I know this to be true. And this didn't happen during the playoffs, but when we won 22 games in a row in Cleveland, we were on a roll. We were pitching good, blah, 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 going into this 22 games. We got 7 games into the winning streak, and I stopped doing any and all advance reports. I didn't do an advance report for the next 12 to 15 games.
Wow.
And we won 20 and 22 in a row.
Holy
because
hell.
they were on a roll. It didn't matter what the report was. These guys were on a roll. I think we gave up less runs than we hit home runs during that stretch.
Wow.
So, I think we gave up 19 runs in 22 games or something silly like that. It was crazy. And that's without any information at all.
Yeah.
And I realized at that moment, like, when guys are going good and there's just that thing that's clicking, don't talk to them, man. Leave them alone, because all I can do as a coach is mess them up. It's like going to a guy and talking to him in the middle of a no-hitter in the fifth inning. I'm going to stay on the other end of the dugout. When they're on a roll like that, let them go. Let them be the athlete, the performer, that the non-cerebral performer that's out there competing right now. Because when they are in that mindset, that's when they're going to be at their best. They're going to have that fluid body mechanic. They're going to have that relaxed look on their face. They're going to look like Corey Kluber or Jacob deGrom when they're out there pitching, no matter who they are, because they're just doing it without thinking.
Yeah.
I'm a big golfer, and I've been trying to get my golf game going here lately. And if I'm sitting there thinking about my swing and, I got to make sure my wrist isn't cupped and I got to flatten it out and I go hit the ball, I'm not doing myself any good. When I go out there, I know I've been practicing, I'm in a good spot, and I just swing the club and let the ball get hit by the club, then I hit a pretty pure shot. So pulling back in the playoffs, I think, is very important as a coach.
Wow.
And just being there and supporting them and having fun, and don't come to the ballpark tense. You talked about it earlier, like having that even keel every single day. That's very important during the season. Very important. But it's way more important in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Come, have fun, stay relaxed, make sure your players are relaxed so they can go out there and be the best they can be. I think we saw some of it. There was a few relievers in the postseason this year that dominated during the regular season. For whatever reason, they couldn't throw a strike to save their life in the postseason. And that tells me there might have been some stress, some stressors around. Not only is it hard just to do that with the crowd noise and stuff like that, but if there's other people putting some stress on guys on a daily basis, being too uptight, things like that, like, this is a game. And you got to go out and perform and to win. And the way to do that is to be relaxed and have confidence that you've worked on the things you need to work on.
It's awesome.
One thing real quick, because you're talking about those analytics, those reports, different things. There's a point where you're just like, hey, I'm not doing them. We're on a roll. These guys aren't asking for them. We're just going to go get them. So with that, if you're going to, with the data and analytics, with how much it keeps progressing and progressing and progressing, baseball has this tendency of swinging pendulums, of where it's all of one thing and nothing of the other, and then it'll swing back the other way, I've noticed. So with that, if you're going to make your blend in your mind, like what data is going to help you evaluate that player to be ready for the game? What data does the player actually need? Is there any, like, 2 things, 3 things, or hey, just this one thing? What do you need to know? And I know that's going to vary by guy to guy, but if you're doing an advanced report, what information would you be given?
So I want the player, the pitcher, first and foremost, to understand how good his pitches really are. We would sit them down. Even if these guys thought their breaking ball was really good, we might show them, hey, look, your breaking ball is not very good at all. And I've had a lot of players like that you had to sit down, you had to be totally honest with them and tell them and kind of rank their pitches in order. And I wanted them to understand that there should be a certain plan of attack for them, no matter who the hitter is. This is where your fastball plays the best. This is the quadrant you should throw it in. This is where your slider plays the best. This is when you should throw it. After that, I want to layer on information that's pretty simple based on what the hitter can and can't do. And you kind of present everything to the group that way, the starters and the relievers. And then I always like to take the starter and try to mix both of them. So I would say, hey, look, this is your best arsenal ranked in this order, and this is how you should use it. And then if we're talking about against Mike Trout, this is what we're going to do. And then I would allow the bullpen coach, or want the bullpen coach, to go and do the same thing with the reliever. So I really want them to first and foremost focus on their own plan of attack, no matter who the hitter is, and then layer on little bits of information about the hitter's weaknesses that we may be able to expose if it lines up with our plan of attack already. You know, when you're facing Mike Trout.
Okay, wait. I gotta stop you. I'm sorry, Mickey, because I want people to know exactly what you said in that. Okay. There's a very big distinct difference. And I've noticed.
I already took a few notes.
Yeah,
so
I'm ready to, in terms of how to give information to a player. It's player first, which is good. They got to know themselves. Okay. That's great, because now they're better self-evaluators then. But what you just said there is you then go to hitters' weaknesses. I see a lot of people, and I've had pitchers complain to me that they focus too much on hitters' strengths. So now, here I am as a pitcher, my brain is going loss aversion. I don't want to throw it there. I'm afraid to throw it. That's a red zone. You're telling them, hey, we're going to give you the blue information. We're going to give you where they're not hitting. Channel your brain there. Don't worry about what they're good at. Let's focus on what they're not. Go ahead, man. That was awesome.
Real quick on that. You remember Jason Brown? I knew Jason Brown from, back in 2005, probably, when he was, I know, Ryan, we're going to mention him. He was working for Tom House at the time as a bullpen catcher. I remember when he got a job with the Yankees, he came back and he's like, man, we leave these meetings. And he's like, we have a Aroldis Chapman, or who, like at the time, Robinson. It's like, we have the best relievers in baseball. And they leave these meetings going, man, every single hitter I face is Superman. It's like, you're one of the best pitchers to ever walk the face of the earth. I don't think you need to worry about it. It's like the 9 hitter apparently is a Hall of Famer all the time, but go on.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That is essential. So what we're talking about here is, in every report I've ever given, any talk I've ever talked to a player with, any mound visit I've ever made, is I only talked about where you can throw the ball. Mm-hmm. I've never once had a red dot on, a strike zone. Don't throw the ball here, because that's what they're going to remember.
Sure.
My zone, when I did my heat maps for our pitchers on where they should throw the ball, it was only green areas. Now there were some that weren't. I just left out the red. I didn't want to put it on there.
Yeah.
Because all I wanted them to see was, okay, this is where I can throw the ball. Because like you said, once you start saying, oh my gosh, don't throw Mike Trout down and in.
Yeah, your head's going
your head's going there. And it's like hitting a golf ball. Don't hit it in the lake on the left. You're going to hit it in the lake on the left. Yeah. Instead of going, you know what, I'm going to hit a nice little draw down the right side of the fairway. So always make sure that you're talking about the pitcher's strengths and the hitter's weaknesses. Yeah. And then make sure that they kind of line up a little bit, because if I'm not very good, Mike Trout is so freaking good. Mm-hmm. If my fastball doesn't play up in the zone, even though Mike Trout might not be a great high ball hitter, or didn't used to be when he first started playing, when I had to make a game plan against him, if I'm not very good at it, he is Mike Trout.
Mm-hmm. I shouldn't
try to throw it there either. Right. I shouldn't try to throw it there because it's his weakness. I got to make sure that the hitter's weakness lines up with my strength.
Oh, my gosh.
If that makes sense. I want to make sure, because in the end, you can't control where the ball goes, what Mike Trout does to the ball. All you can do is say, hey, I had a good approach. I gave it my best delivery, and then live with the results. And if you pitch to your strengths more often than not, you can live with those results a little bit. Well, you know what? I threw my best pitch and Mike Trout hit it out. What can I do? He's just better than me in that moment. But if I try to do something I'm not capable of and Mike Trout hits a homer, I'm not going to be able to live with that very easily.
Yeah, man, this is so good because it's like, you got to balance weakness to weakness, strength to weakness. So it's like, okay, here's his weakness.
Absolutely.
There's your weakness. That's probably not going to
Yeah.
come up with a good result just because of his ability level. But, we're on the topic just before we got to, wrap this up, but we're on the topic of strength and weaknesses. And I remember when you came into the organization, I'm not going to name the name of the company, but we had, the first look, Jordan and I, into dynamometry, the force testing for the throwing arm. That was, Jordan and I saw the value and we were seeing it right away. But you had already had experience in your previous coaching and managing where guys were using strength testing. And I remember you saying to me that the pitchers would feel that their arms were more prepared doing their tests. So I wanted you to just kind of communicate about that because, like, a lot of our company people think, oh, this is a medical tool or this is a strength tool. We're really this is a pitching tool. This is a throwing tool. Pitching coaches, need to understand this stuff, to evaluate the throwing arms, to make the individualized training, to prepare them for the day. So I, want to communicate a little bit about that because kind of how you experienced it when you first saw it, and because it was like, whoa, hey, he's familiar with this. I thought I was doing something pretty interesting. So did Jordan. And it's like, I've seen this before, man. This is what, our guys, they really liked it. And it was great for us to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, obviously, first and foremost, physical health is the most important thing in sports, probably in life, than anything else, because it doesn't matter how strong you are mentally. If you can't stay healthy to go out there and pitch, that really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how hard you throw or how good your arsenal is if you can't go out there and stay healthy and perform. So this is the most important thing when it comes to pitching is arm health and keeping your staff healthy. That's the key to winning. If you can do that, you're going to win ball games because you put together this team for a reason, because they're the best players you could get, or they're the best players you scouted. And if you can keep them on the field, you got a pretty good chance of those guys having success and your team winning more times than not. So, but I was familiar with that. And the thing that always stood out to me is once we started testing these guys, all of a sudden, when you're testing and using those things that we use, you're kind of working the arm out a little bit. You're working the elbow out, you're warming it up, you're stretching it out, you're stretching that shoulder and warming that shoulder up. Some guys started using it as a tool to potentiate before, and that's a term I learned from Rhino, potentiate those muscles. And I love it. I use it all the time. I do it. I go to the gym down the road and I potentiate my body before I go hit balls in the range and go play golf. That's how much I believe in it, because it's unbelievable, and everybody knows what this is. They just might not know what to call it. But if you go into the gym, you start working out, man, those first 10 reps of bench or whatever, squats, man, they're tough. And all of a sudden you hit that spot where, oh, I'm loose now. Well, you're potentiated. Your muscles ready to fire and work the right way. So
good analogy.
These guys started using that as kind of a warm up to even go out and play catch, because they liked the way they felt after they did it. And then it kind of became the IPP, the independent pitching program. But you and I kind of named that, or you named it IPPs, man.
That was awesome.
But you have to potentiate your body and have an independent pitching program based on who you are and what your body can do, to be able to go out there and get the best out of those first 20 throws of the day, because you don't ever want to waste a throw. When your first throw of the day, you're lobbing the ball, it's putting a lot of strain on your elbow, it's doing this and it's doing that. So you better be ready to sit there, come set, go through your delivery, and deliver the ball to your partner in a way that is productive and is healthy. And the only way to do that is to potentiate and have that independent pitching program that is probably 45 minutes long before you go and, throw the first ball. When I played, we went out and half stretch, kind of act like we stretched for 10 minutes and we started playing catch. And I put Modus sleeves on all of our guys in Cleveland. And when they went out there and just started lobbing the ball, with no form, not getting their lead arm up, not striding out the way they should, those were the most stressful throws of the day. And they were lobbing the ball because their body wasn't in the right position. Their arm wasn't in that high cocked position that allows you to use, your lower half and your trunk to deliver the ball to your partner. So it made sense that those are the most stressful because you're just kind of going like this. I mean, it hurts my arm just to do that.
Yeah.
Sitting here, but you have to potentiate your body and you have to warm up the right way. And I think those guys that were getting tested started throwing, man, this kind of makes me feel good. So I'm going to continue to do that. And I'm going to make it part of my program every day before I go out and play catch.
Amazing. Well, listen, man, this has been an incredible podcast. Jordan and I are very grateful, for your time to be on this. I think the people who are listening to this that have hung with us, this is going to be really groundbreaking for them to utilize the information and wisdom that you've provided, man. So, we wish you all the best. We're so grateful to see you again and talk, man. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. And, I appreciate what you guys are doing out there. Let's educate these guys on how to stay healthy and throw the ball the right way.
Awesome, man.
All right, boys. Jordan, Ryan, take care, buddy.
All right. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening.